Welcome into the Fantasy Life Show. I am Kendall Valenzuela, and we've got the one, the only Thor Nystrom with us today. Because you know what, Thor? It is time to get ready for the NFL draft. The vibes are immaculate. We've got, what do you got? The University of Iowa shirt on. I've got us for ASU here in the Peach Bowl. We're ready to go. How's it going?
It's going well. It's draft season now, Kendall. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to run through a wall. I'm ready to mock draft.
I love it. All right, it is time for Thor Thursdays, so let's get into it. Like I said, time for Thor Thursdays. I don't know if that doesn't make you want to run through a brick wall, Thor, because it does for me. Like, we're ready to go, presented by DraftKings. Like we said, we're getting you ready for all things NFL draft. We're going through the mocks. We're going through the breakdowns. We're going through the player reviews. And we are ready to go, Thor. I mean, this is your bread and butter. This is what you wait for all season. So it's exciting that it's finally here, too.
Yeah, it is. And now we have the first 24 picks, I believe, are set in stone. We got the wild card losers are now locked into place, including my Minnesota Vikings, unfortunately, at the 24 slot. But yeah, I mean, it's awesome when you have my job to get the official draft order set. And now we're through the 24. So yeah, let's run through some picks, Kendall.
Yeah, let's do it. In my Seattle Seahawks, you can see it on the screen here. So you see the asterisks here on the side. This is per tankathon. Those are all the set picks right now. And then you can see at the end, those are kind of their projections. So you see the Lions over there, 32, 31, 30 for the Eagles. But we're going to get right into it, Thor. Like you said, we're going to go through this mock draft that is live at fantasylife.com so people can go and check it out. But I just want to throw it to you. Let's start at the very top, going deep dive through the first top 12 here. The Tennessee Titans are on the clock. And where do you have them going with the first overall pick?
This is an interesting one. Right now at the sports books, they have Cam Ward as the odds-on favorite to go number one. It's just a guess, right? I mean, the Titans just fired Rand Carthon. We don't even know the decision makers that are going to be making this decision yet. I am pretty confident in saying this is going to be a binary decision. You're down to one of the two quarterbacks. I don't buy the scenario that whoever is making this decision, that they would consider a trade down. Your quarterback need is too acute. And what other available quarterbacks are there out there to fill that, right? You have two guys in this draft that can step in immediately day one and start. Cam Ward and Shadeur Sanders, who we're going to talk about in a second. Free agency, you have Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy probably going to stay. You have more quarterback needy teams than you have available quarterbacks who most would consider week one starting viable options 2025. Therefore, the Titans stay in this spot. And I'm going to go against the market here because I think that I don't have Cam Ward as QB1. I have Shadeur Sanders as QB1. And again, this decision is going to be talked through with people maybe that aren't even in the building yet in Tennessee over these next couple of months. My situational assumption right now, just, again, it's my QB1. I'm going with Shadeur Sanders. In some ways, you're surprised by where, the market assumption on this. In other ways, you're not. Cam Ward, it was the high profile transfer. He had declared for the draft last year. And then this year, his game shot up. I'll talk about him more in a second. I think when you look at him apples to Shadeur Sanders, outside of the rote measurements, I think equips himself better here. There's no measure in which Cam Ward was better than Shadeur Sanders any year prior to this past season. And then you dig into the numbers this year. Here's one really telling one for you, Kendall. I like looking at big time throw rate and turnover worthy play rate as opposed to touchdown to interception ratio. It is more predictive of the future and more telling of the play that was actually on the field. This season, Shadeur Sanders, big time throw rate to turnover worthy play rate ratio, 4.33. That is stellar. You don't see better than that. Yeah. Cam Ward, 1.84. The Cam Ward, it's an elevated turnover risk with him at essentially an analogous big time throw rate. The turnover worthy play rate for Cam Ward this year, 3.1. Shadeur Sanders was 1.2. Adjusted accuracy percentage for Shadeur Sanders, 81.6 this season. Cam Ward, 76.3. I could keep going. I like Shadeur Sanders more. Cam Ward is a bit bigger. He is certainly thicker. It's one of the reasons I think, again, for some of these assumptions heading in. But I have Shadeur Sanders as QB1, and we're going to give the Titans Shadeur Sanders.
I like that. And that's the first thing when people are going to see this mock draft. You see a lot of Cam Ward, and it's kind of the easy pick that you see. A lot of other mock drafts do, but it's going to be between these two guys. And I think the Titans, how attractive is this GM job? That's another question where, you keep the head coach, you get a new GM. That's really going to stir some things up. But and you just said it, Thor, they need to go get a quarterback. It hasn't been good or stable over there since Ryan Tannehill 2022. And that's when, his play started to get a little bit more poor. But I know the Levis experience. I like that they stuck with Will Levis just to see what they had and make sure that that wasn't the guy that they wanted to go through. But listen, you throw 13 touchdowns to 12 interceptions this season, and you finish with an NFL worst 27.6 QBR, Thor. You need to go get it. There's no question. You need to get a quarterback, and then you need to add some weapons here to this team because, yes, you have Calvin Ridley. Yes, you have Tony Pollard, but it all has to start with a really good quarterback for this team.
That's it. I mean, they're going nowhere until they solve the quarterback thing. They already know that Will Levis is not the answer. You have to go outside the building, right? And if it's not going to be Sam Darnold, again, who else is out there for you? You got gifted this number one pick. We probably should be talking about the New England Patriots here, right? But Jared Mayo pulled a Lovie Smith and played the Patriots from the one pick down. The Patriots drop all the way to 4, but that's the reason that Titans get gifted this number one pick. You have to take your quarterback of the future here.
All right, let's go to the next pick. And really on the board, who would be on the board is the Cleveland Browns. But in this mock draft, Thor, you have a little bit of a trade going on, which I absolutely love. So you've got a trade with the Browns. Giants are now on the board. Who do you think that they go and get?
Yeah, to me, the Browns hold the key of the entire draft. We just talked about the Texans, but there's only two different paths, in my opinion, the Titans, that they could walk down here. It's either the Cam Ward path or the Shadeur Sanders path. You look at the Browns, though, in slot 2, this is a choose your own adventure, but there's too many different options for the publishers to put them out, right? I mean, the Browns could go a million different directions here. You could stick and pick a quarterback. You could stick and pick the draft's best player in Travis Hunter. You could stick and pick the draft's most disruptive defender in Abdul Carter. And then there's several different teams that you could trade down with if that's what you want to do. We have them trading down with the Giants here. You just move down one spot, which would still have Cleveland in the position to either take Travis Hunter, who, spoiler alert, is who they're about to get at number 3, or Abdul Carter, whoever they wanted. You could do that, or certainly they are going to be getting calls, for instance, from the Las Vegas Raiders sitting at 6, the Jets at number 7. Aaron Rodgers indeed not coming back next year. You have all these quarterback needy teams, so there's going to be a bunch of different options for the Browns here. I had the Browns trading down one spot with the Giants, and we have a trade here that jives by more or less all the trade charts out there, sort of a Kelly Blue Book fair trade if it was going to be the 2 for the 3. And what you got here is the Giants ponying up the 3rd pick to move up the 1 slot along with the 34th pick. So you're at the top of the second round, 2nd pick in the 2nd round, and then 104 at the top of the 4th round. You've jived the trade charts there. The Giants, they need a quarterback even more desperately than the Titans. And sitting at 3, you, of course, do not control your own destiny. You would have to fear that the Browns would stick and pick that 2nd quarterback above you, and or that they would trade with a team who is hopping beneath you. The only way the Giants can be guaranteed that they get that quarterback for week 1, that rookie quarterback that they've been coveting here, is by making that trade up. I think this makes a lot of sense. The Giants end up taking Cam Ward, and I know I just made the case of Shadeur Sanders over Cam Ward. Doesn't mean I don't like Cam Ward as a prospect. I like Cam Ward as a prospect a heck of a lot. This is a guy who, in advance of this season, I thought he was a little bit overblown. But this season, his game really, really jumped up, Cam Ward. His ADOT, 7.7 to 9.8. Yards per attempt, 7.7 to 9.5. The pressure to sack rate dropped from 25.1 to 16.3. All the play rate stats went up on him. The positive ones, the negative ones all went down. His game has gone to another level, and Cam Ward now is worth a top 3 pick, and the Giants get their quarterback of the future.
I love this call out for many reasons, like you just said, but I love it for the Browns, who we can go down a laundry list of things that they need in this draft and that they have to do and that they have to try and focus on. But for the Giants, they kept Brian Daboll, they kept their GM, and so you're looking at them with this new season, and you were kind of thinking, a lot of people were thinking that this was going to be it for them. Blow it up. Let's see what happens for this team that just had a horrible record. They went with a Tommy DeVito, they went with a Tim Boyle at one point, they went with the Drew Lock. Like it was all bad. And so you did that because Daniel Jones was no longer the answer. So Thor, with them now moving up, you get, like you just said, the quarterback of the future. And then for Daboll, you're looking at that and saying, all right, this is the swing that they have to go through. And if they're going to keep both of those guys, you have to put your faith in a new quarterback and see if that helps. They honestly have had good drafts. Like this past draft, when we look at the Giants for Malik Neighbors, for some of those other pieces that they have, they're not in a bad place necessarily, but they just had to get away from Daniel Jones and doing this with a new quarterback and kind of giving him the weapons that he has around him. You continue to build around that. I really like this call out for them, and it's what they need for Brian Daboll to keep his job too.
Yeah, I mean, you're running it back for another year. I was shocked about that too, Kendall. I'm with you on that one. But those guys, they have to do something to sell this to the fan base, right? I mean, and the rookie quarterback is the perfect way to do that. Is Sam Darnold in the greater New York area? Is that going to get anyone super duper excited? Whereas if you get the rookie quarterback and they're even competitive next year, right? 7-8 wins. We're not talking the playoffs, but if you show legitimate progress with your hand-picked rookie quarterback here, I think that's how those guys get additional years beyond this one next year.
Yeah, agreed, 1,000%. Let's go over to who you had the Giants trading with, which was the Cleveland Browns. So now the Cleveland Browns sitting with the 3rd overall pick in the draft. Who do you have them taking?
I'm taking Travis Hunter. I know that some people, they Abdul Carter, and we'll put Abdul Carter across from Myles Garrett, and we're strike fear and quarterbacks around the NFL. I mean, it's not a bad idea. It's not like I would argue against it, but Travis Hunter is the best player in this draft. Period. End of story. This is a guy who you can actually argue with most guys in the draft every year, even the best guy at another position. You can't really make the argument that qualitatively his value would be analogous to a quarterback. You can start doing that with Travis Hunter because the guy plays both ways. He's going to be a CB1 in the NFL, and as a rookie, we're going to have to see how many offensive snaps he can handle. I'm guessing between 40 to 50%, but whatever team drafts him, they're going to give him as much as he can handle, because for a lot of these teams, he would function as the wide receiver one when he's on playing offense. He certainly would for Cleveland, right? And then Jerry Jeudy would go back to his secondary role that he is more comfortable in, and the whole receiving core would end up lining up as it probably should look anyway. Cleveland grabbing Hunter here, it's not just you get the draft's best player, it's not just you essentially plug 2 different lineup holes. With all that different draft equity that you're getting, with this trade, you would have 3 top 34 picks, and then you would, 4 top 34 picks, and then you would have 7 inside the top 105. So that the Browns would have all kinds of equity to fire away.
Are you going to maybe look at this and have some people push back on this? Because Travis Hunter is obviously the best guy. Does the new Deshaun Watson injury to you, come into play here at all? Do you think that maybe they're going to start looking and saying, well, we've got, like you said, the best place in the draft right now at number 2, if not number 1. Could you see them potentially like maybe mulling around and saying, well, we could draft a Cam Ward, we could draft a quarterback here, just because Deshaun Watson with a new Achilles injury could keep him out for the 2025 season?
1,000%. And it's 3 in the top 34. I misspoke there for a second, but 3 in the top 34, and it would be the 7 inside the top 105. And yes, Kendall, the quarterback question, that's the most topical one with this. My situational assumption here is that the Atlanta Falcons, they're going to have to release Kirk Cousins probably post June 1, because you are going to destroy your books if you do it this year. Yeah. Next year's Atlanta Falcons, they wouldn't be able to field a competitive roster. So I think you're going to get it after June 1st. And I wonder if there will be a wink, handshake sort of a deal between Kirk Cousins and Kevin Stefanski, the guy that they worked together just about a couple miles away from where I'm sitting right now in the Twin Cities with the Minnesota Vikings. You reunite those two. Kirk Cousins, you sign the minimum deal. You get a guy like Travis Hunter, like this potentially the best player in the draft. You're plugging 2 different holes. Now you have all this extra draft ammunition from having traded down. And you have a lion's share of Deshaun Watson's guaranteed money this year insured. And they have already started the process of trying to get out of that money, be relieved of it through saying that Deshaun Watson cannot play next year. For people out there that don't know, the amount that is insured on a guaranteed contract like that, if the guy is medically ruled out the next year, that money is freed back to you in your salary cap space. So this is the road for the Cleveland Browns to go from being awful this year to competitive next year. There is a path to it, and it might involve Kirk Cousins. We'll have to see.
I like that. And he underwent, Deshaun Watson underwent surgery last Thursday, for anyone that didn't kind of know. So it was after tearing his right Achilles tendon again. The team announced that. Listen, it's $230 million fully guaranteed. That was before the 2022 season. He's owed $46 million on each of the next two seasons. So it'll be interesting, Thor, to see how that plays out, which maybe quarterback, like you said, in free agency they go and get. So I really like that call out there. Before we continue on with picks 4 through 7, let's go talk from our friends over at DraftKings here. Hey, football fans, there's only a few short weeks left in the season, and we've got some exciting wild card games to look forward to now. Get in on the action right now with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. They are offering all new customers $200 in bonus bets instantly after betting just $5. Don't let this slip away. Download the DraftKings app now and sign up using code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. All right, Thor, moving right along, we're going to go over to pick 4 overall. You've got the New England Patriots with their brand new shiny head coach in Mike Vrabel. So, Thor, what are you looking at here for the Patriots at number 4? Where do they go?
Vrabel likes to run the ball. He's already doing he's got his stats. If a team runs more than 40 times, if they pass more than 50, we're not going to talk about causation and correlation with Mr. Vrabel, but we know that he likes to run the ball. He likes to build from the trenches, etc. That offensive line with New England is a travesty. They have finished dead last in pass protection rate the last 2 years running. You have the young quarterback who acquitted himself well this year, Drake May, behind that shoddy offensive line. You have to get that offensive line better. The thing that Drake May, when he would struggle in college at UNC, it was always decision-making under duress, right? It didn't rear its ugly head as much as I think I would have projected this year. That is a credit to Drake May. You can't put him through that again. You have to improve this line. I think Kelvin Banks Jr., the offensive tackle from Texas, is the pick here. Some people have the Patriots going for Will Campbell. The folks that have the Patriots taking offensive line help, Will Campbell from LSU. Kelvin Banks Jr. was significantly better than Will Campbell this past season. To me, there is not a question about tackle one in this class. You just look at PFF grade, 86 this past season for Banks, 71 for Campbell. The pass protection rates, the efficiency, they're not even close. One that stuck out to me, true pass set grade, like the on the stuff with the RPOs or the play action or the screens. I don't care as much how you're holding up. The straight dropbacks on those where they're analogous for every guy. What is your efficiency with that? Kelvin Banks's was 5 points higher than, actually more than 5.6 points higher than Will Campbell's this past year. Kelvin Banks is the best pass protecting offensive lineman that we have in this class. This would be a really good fit with the Patriots.
Yeah, and like you said with Drake May, I mean, I think that is why when they looked at their head coaching situation, and it was unfortunate, 1 year and done head coaches, but they saw that it didn't look like that staff was going to be able to kind of help Drake May continue to succeed. I think Drake May is ahead in what they thought was going to be a little bit longer process with the rookie quarterback. So now you've got Mike Vrabel coming in, Thor, with the Patriots, and you've got a lot of money too. When you look at just like the cap and stuff, they're not going up against a lot. They've got enough cap space to go and get really any free agent. So I think tackling that offensive line, making sure Drake May has a little bit more to work with here, and then you go get more weapons. That's the other part of this that I'm sure we'll talk about later when more mocks come out. Like it just seems right for the Patriots. And I don't know. I think that's a good job. I think they did a good job hiring. I think Vrabel's going to come in. He knows how to kind of work that system. And so you go in, you hit a home run in the draft, and you have a rookie quarterback that honestly, like you said, looked pretty good this year.
That's it. I mean, Vrabel is obviously the perfect fit for their culture. Yeah. I mean, you couldn't have gotten better with that. You already know what you're getting. There's no guessing there. And as far as the cap situation heading into this offseason, to your point, projected $131.6 million of free cap space for the Patriots to use. That's before you even get to potential restructures, right? You know, like other things that you would do to open up money or cuts or whatever. They go in with 131.6. So to your point, I mean, you do have a lot of holes around, but you've solved the quarterback going forward. You have an enormous amount of draft equity, and you're the kings of the castle in the NFL as far as open cap space. So the Patriots should have a fun and exciting offseason.
I like it. Another team that we have to go to now, the Jacksonville Jaguars, sit with the number 5 overall pick. And this is one, I don't know, Thor, when I look at the Jaguars, I thought it was going to be a better season this year, and it wasn't. They had a ton of injuries. We can talk here about Trevor Lawrence, but who do you have them taking right now?
I'm going on defense. They need Trevor Lawrence to stay healthy, but we can't address that with draft picks. We can, though, address that porous defense. This decision for me came down to 2 Michigan Wolverines, and I went back and forth, because Jacksonville needs help on the interior defensive line. They also need a shutdown cornerback. So for me, it was between Mason Graham, who is the havoc-wreaking 3 technique for Michigan. Super fortified guy, quick first step. The core strength is ridiculous on that guy. You jar him, he just keeps coming forward. He's like the Terminator. And then Will Johnson is the shutdown corner that we have in this class. If you're just considering boundary corner, Travis Hunter, I put him in a different category. But Will Johnson, he erased one side of the field whenever he was out on there. However, Will Johnson this season was nicked up. He only ended up playing like 5 games or whatever. Graham, we got the full body of work. So that's why I ended up going to Mason Graham here for Jacksonville. They like the defensive trench play as well. Obviously, Trayvon Walker a couple years ago. Trent Baalke is back. Most people didn't agree with that, but Trent Baalke will be making this decision. I think Trent Baalke will be attracted to Mason Graham.
Yeah, I was surprised, Thor. I don't know about you. You fired Doug Peterson, but you say, okay, we're going to keep the guy that hasn't been helping us necessarily get back to the winning that we saw 2 years ago with Trevor Lawrence when they made that run in the playoffs. So that's what makes me a little bit nervous. You're going to see names all around, Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, all these big names. But to me, it's really hard pairing a head coach with a GM that's already there that obviously hasn't proven to do a lot yet. Their free agent class was bad too, by the way. We can talk about that and just say, you know, when you look at the moves that they made, they had over $75 million in guarantees, and I think only Mitch Morse was the good call there in free agency. So they've got a lot to go through, but I think it's a good call going through and going to the defense right here and just trying to get a little bit of control somewhere in this whole entire team and organization.
That's right. I mean, they need a lot of help there. Even if they get the healthy Trevor Lawrence, your defense stinks. So what are you going to do to address that? And this decision right here is at the forefront of this offseason. This thing of Graham against Johnson, they might talk about a couple other names there. In this scenario, Abdul Carter as well would probably enter the chat as far as a name that they are bandying about. But for me, Mason Graham was the best start to their efforts to try to turn that defense around.
Yeah, I like that. Because again, it's a lot with the Jaguars. Like we can ask each other what's wrong and we'll just sit here and have a whole show for an hour of what's wrong with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So they've got a lot of things that they have to address, but I really like them going and you picking them to go defense first there. The next pick in this mock draft that we have, and again, this is at fantasylife.com. You can go and check that out. It's the Las Vegas Raiders, who again, we talk about a team that needs a little bit more help than others. That could be them. With the 6th overall pick though, Thor, who do you have them going with?
I have him going with Jalen Milroe from Alabama, a guy who I think Jalen Milroe is going to go significantly higher than the public does, because we see this every single year. The Jalen Milroe of whatever class, you go back the last several years, he always gets overdrafted. Anthony Richardson is a guy they're bandying about there, and that would be a great example of this. Heading into the NFL Combine, his process, Anthony Richardson was considered a second-round pick. And if you were to say something to the contrary of that, you were an idiot. Well, then Anthony Richardson goes and runs a 40-yard dash, and he jumps in his shorts, and all of a sudden everyone was saying, oh, he's at least top 10. He might be top 5. And it's like, we knew that he was a stud athlete. We know that Jalen Milroe is a stud athlete, and just like Richardson, he has that bazooka arm. He is going to blow the roof off of Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. First, we're going to get to see him having NFL scouts drooling in Mobile later this month at the Senior Bowl. He's going to do very well. It's an event that is designed for guys like this. The downfield throwing, there will be oohs and ahs in that stadium. But the comparison between him and Richardson, I think, is really interesting, because you are going to hear those two guys evoke to each other throughout the process. assuredly in a way that is a slanderous to Jalen Milroe. But if you look at them coming out of college, Milroe was the far better player in the SEC. He was the far better passer, and he's way more experienced. So just the comparison between the two, Milroe had 663 career attempts. Richardson at Florida had 393. Jalen Milroe was almost 10 percentage points more accurate just by the road completion percentage, and then less mistake prone and more proven. 45-20 career TDINT rate for Milroe. Richardson coming out of Florida was 24-15, and Richardson is a little bit taller. He's a little bit heftier, but they are extremely analogous as runners. Milroe is definitely more agile, probably a little bit more explosive as well. Each of their last 2 seasons in college, Jalen Milroe this past season at Alabama averaged 55.8 rushing yards per game. Richardson, his last year at Florida, 54.5. Milroe is right there with him as far as how dangerous of a runner he is. He provides, though, a better passer. Like I said, he's going to go way higher than people think. And here he goes to an organization that fetishizes players that are exactly like him. I can tell you, Kendall, last process, and this part of it's not a surprise, the Raiders adored Jaden Daniels. And people knew that because Antonio Pierce was their coach. Antonio Pierce, of course, as you know, Kendall, now we're getting right into your kitchen here with Arizona State. But Antonio Pierce at Arizona State helped to bring Jaden Daniels there. And then you go the process before that. I don't know how widely this was reported, but I can tell you, Kendall, the Raiders loved Anthony Richardson that class. They tried to trade up, and they couldn't get up there. The Colts beat them to the punch. This year, a guy like Milroe falls into your lap. You don't have the long-term quarterback. If they don't sign a Sam Darnold, I think this pick makes all the sense in the world.
I love this. And you're speaking our language when you talk about fantasy football too, which we'll do that later. But like you say, Anthony Richardson, and we love the rushing upside, the dual threat quarterbacks that can also use their legs, be a better passer. Now, I know Anthony Richardson this past season, it was unfortunate. He was benched. He had a 47.7% completion percentage. Wasn't the best, but that doesn't mean that he can't get it right. So, and I love this with Las Vegas, right? It's unfortunate, new head coach and new GM, Telesco was out as well. So they're really cleaning house to try and get back into the playoffs. They haven't won a playoff game in 22 years, Thor. So any way you look at it, I think they have pieces too. Like you got Brock Bowers last season. Jacoby Myers was good. You still have Max Crosby. Like there's things they have to figure out, but I think they're going to land one of the better head coaches. I can see this team getting a Ben Johnson here, and you get a Ben Johnson, you get an offensive minded head coach, and you pair him with a quarterback like Jalen Milroe. And now you're kind of going and you're saying, all right, well, we've got our quarterback of the future, hopefully. So I think Las Vegas is in a good spot, and Tom Brady's in there now. So, I think they're going to land a good head coach here and then see what they do in the draft. But yeah, Jalen Milroe, it would be a surprise to a lot of people, but I think it would be a good surprise.
Yeah, and still we don't, the head coach is going to inform a lot of this, right? Like if there was the smoke about Deion Sanders for a couple days there. If he was the coach, they're going to try to trade into the top 2 so he can get his son Shadeur. If it's a guy like Ben Johnson, I wonder if he would try to push them to go maybe a little bit harder after a Sam Darnold, a guy who is going to, as you say in Hollywood, read the lines as they are written. That's what Ben Johnson prefers. Jalen Milroe, sometimes he got his own lines that he wants to ad-lib a little bit out there. But there are certainly coaches as well that would be extremely attracted to a Jalen Milroe. And one of those more traditional, you think of the Al Davis, what they used to like to do there, the aerial style of football. We lost track of that last year with the Raiders. You had those noodle arm quarterbacks manufacturing touches for Brock Bowers. We want to get that downfield passing game again. Maybe bring in someone, a coach that is also in line with that, and a Jalen Milroe be a good fit. $107 million in cap space too for the Raiders. So things are looking up for them. Just see how they do with their head coach search and everything else that needs to go down with it. Let's go over to number 7 here for the Jets. Who do you have the Jets taking here at this spot, Thor? Jets are a tough one. They are boxed out of the quarterbacks. Quinn Ewers, who has now officially declared for the NFL draft, absolutely should not be going in the first round. That's the only time I'm going to bring his name up here. The one quarterback whose decision, if it would have changed, could have, in my opinion, gotten involved for this pick, or the one above it, would have been Drew Allard from Penn State, because you can dream on the tools at that point. But Drew Allard says he's going back to Penn State. So we have to audible somewhere else. why not? Let's stay in Happy Valley and go to the other side of the ball and bring in that relentless freak, Abdul Carter, who the Penn State coaching staff had this inspired idea to move Abdul Carter this past offseason from off-ball linebacker to the edge. And Abdul Carter went to the moon this year. He was like a cryptocurrency, right? I mean, like he number 1 in the FBS in tackles for loss, and he gets after the quarterbacks. He's just absolutely relentless. But the relentlessness manifests even more against the run. It's really interesting. You will see Abdul Carter chase down guys outside the other tackle, the other way behind the line of scrimmage, which you don't see defensive ends doing. He just did it in their last game when they were playing Notre Dame. He's like picking through the bodies, as he's flying down the line of scrimmage after he disengages from the right tackle. And he met, I believe it was Jeremiah Love, it was either him or Prince, but met him behind the line. And the guy probably looked over and like, how the hell is he over here, number 11? How is he here already? And then he just gets smacked behind the line. But the relentlessness, it plays. He can get off the blocks, the paths to the ball carriers and such. That came from his off-ball days. He's great at that. But this guy has a preternatural ability for shedding blocks and getting into the backfield. And Penn State this year just said, kid, go and do what you do best. Don't worry about the coverage stuff or anything like that. The Jets here, you take Abdul Carter, you put him across from Will McDonald, you have one of the NFL's most fearsome pass rushes the next 5, 6, 7 years. So I think this would be a good pick. The quarterback's still going to be a big question, obviously, right? But you just can't address it here. So you have to go with Abdul Carter.
No, you can't address it. And the financial implications with Aaron Rodgers, I mean, I think that we're just going to be in this kind of limbo until we kind of figure it out for them. The new league year begins March 12th at 4 p.m. So teams can officially start signing free agents there. I don't know if they don't go and look at someone that is just a Band-Aid right now. Sam Darnold is one that you can look at. You've got Russell Wilson, maybe Justin Fields if he doesn't get re-signed with the Steelers. I mean, a Jameis Winston is one as well. So I agree with you that they can't really address the quarterback situation here. But I love the call on defense, though, because Thor, if they go out and get a new head coach, which they're already, casting their net and trying to figure out who it is. But if it ends up being a guy like Brian Flores, who I love, the defensive-minded kind of guy, you go in there, he gives them the plan, like, for your Minnesota Vikings that won them over, turned the defense into one of the NFL's best, and you get him as a head coach and then pair him with his first pick in the draft like this guy, that could be fun.
I got a thought on Brian Flores that I want to pass by you,
Okay.
Kendall. So why was he so successful with the Vikings and everybody loves him? Whereas with the Dolphins, people complain about him. With the Dolphins, he tried to get his hands in on the offense as well, right? Like, and the players that come out and criticize him, Tua, Ryan Fitzpatrick, they're all offensive guys, right? If he gets another job, let's say it's the Jets, I think the change that you will see with Brian Flores is try to do what KOC, Kevin O'Connell, did with Flores, which is say, you got the other side of the ball. For KOC, it was, I'm the offensive guy. That's my side. Mm-hmm. You are the head coach of the defense. I think if Brian Flores gets another opportunity, that's what he's going to say. I'm the head coach of the defense, and the offensive coordinator he goes out and gets, you are the head coach of the offense. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets a head coaching job this offseason.
Yeah, I think it's a good call. I think he learned a lot, too, from his time in Minnesota. I think if he gets the other opportunity, there's a reason to believe that he's going to be a way better head coach his second time around than what we saw in his first. So until we continue on here, we have to talk with our friends and go over to Bud Light.
It's just awful.
Sunday. Time to suit up.
This seems like half zips, kind of a quarter zip.
And sacrifice your body.
This is fun.
Because no matter how hard you football, it's easy to Sunday.
All right, Thor, we're continuing on here going through this mock draft, and it is just electric. I mean, the vibes are immaculate here, Thor, but how could it not be on a Thor Thursday presented by DraftKings? So let's go over to the 8th overall pick in this year's NFL draft. You're looking at the Carolina Panthers, who sneakily, Thor, I mean, things got a lot better as the season went on. Bryce Young had a little bit of a turnaround. They have some consistency, an offseason where they're not having to look for a new head coach, new this, new that. So who do you have the Panthers taking right here?
This is sneakily one of my favorite picks of the entire mock exercise. Tedoroa McMillan from Arizona, the pterodactyl, 6'5", 210-pound outside freak. For Bryce, a guy like Bryce Young, and the throwing it up and the extending the plays, Tedoroa McMillan has the catch radius of an Indian god. It's not just that he's 6'5", he has these long ropey arms, and he catches anything that you get within this ridiculous circle. Some of his highlights out there of catches are stupid. Tedoroa McMillan is the best wide receiver in this class. There is no question over Luther Burden. If the Carolina Panthers ended up taking him, you could say goodbye to my friend, the 40-year-old ancient long in the tooth Adam Thielen, and you could have one of the NFL's, you make this pick, one of the NFL's best young receiving corps. Now it would be headlined with Tedoroa McMillan, and then as the complementary pieces, Xavier Legette. Now you can just start manufacturing the touches for him and let him do his berserker thing. That's what he's miscast as a wide receiver one. You get him into the role that he's meant to be in, though, all of a sudden we're working with something. And then on the other side, Jalen Coker, he should be a possession receiver, right? You don't want to extend it beyond that, but he's going to be a good starting NFL possession guy. If you can cap his utility to that, that is what Tedoroa McMillan would allow the Carolina Panthers to do, in addition to getting them a wide receiver that has all-pro ability.
I am so glad you said that this was kind of one of your favorites, because when I was looking through it, it was one of my favorites, Thor, because you look at what Bryce Young was able to bring to this team. He was benched, and you might have had a thought there for a moment and said, wow, they're really going to have to start this over. You know, it's not going to be Andy Dalton. And then all of a sudden, it just felt like the benching and him coming back, it just all felt right. He averaged 20.7 fantasy points when you look at it from weeks 12 to 18. And so when you look at him, he finished strong with the season high 36.4 points against the Atlanta Falcons. But get this man some weapons. You're right. You can't do it with Adam Thielen again. You know, we love Xavier Legette out here, but he cannot be a wide receiver one. So you just continue to build around Bryce Young and what he was able to do with a new head coach in Dave Canales this season. And I love this pick. This would be a really fun one. And like I said, just get him some weapons and let's see him continue to grow.
That's right. And then Jonathan Brooks, don't forget Jonathan Brooks. Now he's going to be healthy next year, and you got Chuba back. The running back room is going to look really good. This would now you have solved your wide receivers. Bryce Young, all of a sudden Bryce Young, he turned back the clock after his benching, and he looked like the guy that was coming out of Alabama. So Carolina could start cooking with gas here with a pick like this, and Bryce Young keeps progressing.
Gosh, in the year 2025, Thor, we're saying good things about the Carolina Panthers, and I absolutely love to be here for that. That is just a fun turn of events. Let's go over to another team that I listen, I don't know if we're going to be able to say the best nice things about them, but when you look with the number 9 overall pick, you've got the New Orleans Saints here. Just a bad season. There's no other way to put it. You're looking for a new head coach here as well. Had 5 wins. Derek Carr was banged up at the end of the year. So where do you have them going? Who do you have them picking right here?
I brought up Will Johnson, the shutdown boundary corner from Michigan earlier, and he will be in play to go, perhaps starting with the Jacksonville pick, maybe even the pick before. We'll have to see. But if he gets through the wickets there is also the shot that Will Johnson could fall to this range, right at the bottom of the top 10. And the reason for that is Will Johnson was nicked up all season, like I mentioned before. He just wasn't able to play as many snaps. Now, when he was out there, he did the thing that he always does and erases one side of the field, but it was a struggling Michigan team. Will Johnson was only sporadically on the field. That could lead him to fall 3, 4, 5, 6 slots beneath where he otherwise would have gone. In this scenario, he falls down to the Saints at number 9. The Saints are a capped out team that has holes everywhere. The good thing about it, though, is that you're not plugged into one hole, right? You don't have the luxury of getting myopic on 1 or 2 positions. The whole board is your oyster here, and you can just take BPA, and that would be Will Johnson. He is the best player available, and he's headed to the Saints.
I like that. I think best player available is the way the Saints just need to go. I mean, we're gonna have to wait and see who their new head coach is going to be, because obviously, you know, Dennis Allen was fired after losing their 7th straight game in early November over there, and there was just a lot going on, right? I mean, Chris Olave was someone that didn't come back after that concussion. Derek Carr got hurt, and the whole offense, it just feels like at one point got hurt as well. So you look at best player available on the board here, and you just kind of hope, Thor, that a new head coach that comes in is able to bring them not even a little bit more luck, but it's just they're in a division too that's so winnable for them that they can just kind of keep up with it. I don't know what Derek Carr's contract's going to look like, if that's going to be one where he takes a pay cut, if he doesn't, but getting best player available here, especially with someone like Will Johnson, just feels like a good place to start for a team that has a lot of holes that they need to plug.
Yeah, it would be a coup because he is better than the ninth best player in the draft, and he plays a premium position. And again, the Saints, the holes everywhere, and you're projected to have minus $78.4 million in whatever the inverse of cap space is. You are in cap hell. So this would be again, this would be a coup for you, getting access to a guy that probably shouldn't be there.
Let's go over to number 10 overall pick in this year's NFL draft, and that is with the Chicago Bears. You have to be nice, Thor. You know, we've got our producer, Matt Swing, on this call. He might shut us down if you say bad things about them, but where do you think that they're going to go with this pick?
I am them going with Michael Williams, the edge rusher from Georgia.
Nice.
Another one off the Georgia's long line, the conveyor belt of edge rushers there. Some similarities with Chris Jones to Michael Williams' game. And he's a guy who acquitted himself really well. And just like the past Georgia edge rushers that we've seen, a two-way guy, right? Just like Travon Walker, it's a guy who can set the edge for you against the run in addition to the pass rushing he gives you. Yeah, it's interesting with Chicago, right? Because they have cap space and they have holes here on defense, offensive line. So, I mean, they could end up going a couple different directions. We'll probably have a better idea once we get through free agency and see where those open dollars, where they get funneled to by polls and those guys. But right now, where we sit, I think getting a really strong edge rusher here, that would be the preference for Chicago.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, it's interesting because reading this mock draft, and a lot of people when they read it, you know, there's a lot of holes that they have as well. And so when you look at Caleb Williams and a really good young quarterback that has, you know, he's got promise. That's the thing. Like there are things that they can do there, but he took 68 sacks this season, Thor. Now, a lot of those, most of them on him. But when you look at that and you're losing 466 yards on 68 sacks, you have to look back and say, wow, this is a little bit too much. So I don't know if polls how much time he's going to spend looking at that. But could you see, you know, a little bit or at least more mock drafts this season as the weeks go on, maybe a little bit more, you know, offensive line help too?
For sure. And I think in my first one, I think I gave them Will Campbell. And certainly would be an option here. But yeah, you know, like I said, a little bit lower on Will Campbell, even though he's about to go here in the mock draft that we're doing. And you know, with Chicago and that money that you have available, we have some really good offensive linemen who are going to be available on the free agent market. I'm hoping the Bears are going to get involved in a bidding war with the Vikings and like 8 other teams for Trey Smith, the top guard who's out there in free agency. But it's just one example. The Bears are going to be heavily involved with the offensive line market. So we'll have to see where they end up coming out with that. And then where do they fall on Campbell? Or does the NFL like Campbell more than I do? And then Banks gets shoved down here. Then I would probably turn the card in pretty quick with Banks' name if I was Ryan Poles. It just sort of depends on that.
And we'll have to wait and see who their new head coach is as well, and where they turn, what kind of guy he is, and all that good stuff. Coming in next at number 11 is the San Francisco 49ers, who, I mean, I don't know, at least on offense, Thor, when you look at this disaster, that's the only way to put it. You know, they have to look at Brock Purdy and say, all right, are we going to pay you now? Are we going to pay you later? They had so many offensive, just like I said, injuries that just kept them out of the playoffs, which was surprising. But who do you have them taking right now?
The aforementioned Will Campbell, you know, and at this point, you know, 11, this is lower than you see him on other mocks, but I think that this is a more realistic range for Will Campbell. Will Campbell has a lot of ability. It's just this year he took a bit of a step back, and I wonder if the NFL will be punitive with him because of that, and if they are, to what degree, right? But to me, this is sort of splitting the middle in a realistic way of the range that he go in. And for the San Francisco 49ers, your top needs, if you were to do like 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 would probably be interior offensive line and then offensive tackle in one way or the other. Now, the interior offensive line is the more pressing one immediately, whereas the tackle one becomes the more pressing one long term. The tackle one, you're going to have Williams going to retire at some point, maybe now. We'll see when he does. It's going to be the next couple of off seasons either way. And then Colton Makovitz, the kid from West Virginia, he's a free agent after next season. There's your 2 starting tackles. But the interior offensive line is the thing where if they don't fix it, you're going to have issues next year. Christian McCaffrey's not going to be happy. Brock Purdy, if he's back with the team, he's not going to be happy. must fix the interior offensive line. This is where Will Campbell, even though I'm a little bit lower on him, he becomes a really good fit for the 49ers because some people are already debating, is he long enough to play tackle, right? Do we like his feet enough in conjunction with that length to be, for instance, a left tackle in the NFL? There's already people doing the guard thing with him. I got a great idea. The 49ers need a starter right now at guard. You plug Will Campbell right into that thing, and then Williams and Makovets, we'll see what ends up happening with those, but you will have at least one vacancy here in the next year plus, and you might have two shortly after that, right? So at that point, if you end up doing that, you like Will Campbell at that point, you believe in him, as far as going out to the boundary, then you could kick him out to tackle, but you take care of an immediate need here by taking him, and we're shifting him to guard in year one.
I like that. I like that you said that Christian McCaffrey won't be happy. Brock Purdy won't be happy. It's true. And like you mentioned, I mean, the offensive line has been hit by injury. You talk about Trent Williams, who had the ankle injury. He's going to be 37, too, before next season even starts. So you look at the guards that you mentioned with Aaron Banks, with Feliciano over there. I mean, they're also set to become free agents. So when you look at this team as a whole, I think the offensive line is where you need to start just because of the injuries, just because of how you have to look at your team for the next couple years. And they want to lock Brock Purdy down. They want to be able to do that. I know he came up with a quote and said, I'd rather get a contract done sooner rather than later. He had a down year in all of his stats. And I mean, Brandon Ayuk went down. Deebo Samuel was bad. George Kittle was a highlight. And then, of course, we remember Christian McCaffrey and what he wasn't able to do because of his Achilles tendonitis in both of his legs. He had to go to Germany. So I like the draft outlook here and just kind of going for, again, a position of need that will also help them. And I like the way you think about that, Thor, is like it's not just going to help them right away, but in the future, when some of these free agents, some of these guys turn to free agents and they can move some guys around, it's like the perfect fit almost.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, you're sort of killing two birds with one stone. You're killing the bird of your biggest short-term need with the one, and then also the long-term need. Your biggest one is offensive tackle. So let's find one guy that does both. And now look, this is a team that has defensive needs as well. On my needs list, it's like you have the top two, and then it's like break. But like after that, cornerback, interior defensive line, I think they would look at another edge rusher as well, linebacker depth. But yeah, the offensive line, it must be addressed. And so if you haven't taken your $66.6 million projected and figured that out already by free agency, now is the time to do it.
Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys here with the 12th overall pick, and they've moved on from their head coach. It is no longer the Mike McCarthy era, so now you're going to usher in a new head coach. It'll be interesting to see who that is, Thor. But when they do that, who do you have the Cowboys picking right here?
They'll be ushering in a new coach, and watch me. We're giving Ashton Jeanty to Dallas right now. It is the cliche pick in the mock draft community, but it's a cliche because it makes sense, as is so often the case with cliches. You have a brain trust here that, they didn't devote any resource to the running back position last year, but it's the same brain trust that picked Ezekiel Elliott number 4. So don't tell me that they wouldn't take the best running back prospect we've seen past. I think he's better than Bijan. There might be people that disagree with me, but for me, Jeanty, the best one we've seen through that time, that they're not going to take him at 12 when you have the gaping hole there. To me, this one just makes too much sense. And you shift in Jeanty, all of a sudden that offense is going to play way up.
Oh my gosh. It is the obvious pick here, Thor, but they haven't done anything obvious. The last draft, we thought they were going to go and take someone last year. And all of a sudden we're sitting and we're waiting and we're saying, okay, where are they going to go? What are they going to do? How are they going to address this situation? So Ashton Jeanty is so exciting. And to go to the Dallas Cowboys, one, you know me, I like to think of it from a fantasy perspective, but you have a guy that you just plug in right there. And they have to get some more weapons over there too for Dak Prescott. So if you're able to figure out the running back room and you're able to kind of just take some pressure off that, I don't know. That's just so exciting. So even though it's chalky, Thor, it's one of my favorite picks that you've done in this mock draft. It's just too good.
Yeah, he's a singular talent like that, right? Like, yeah. I'm an analytics guy. The arguing against taking a round one running back. Totally get it. Usually I'm banging that drum, but Jeanty must go in round one, the same way that Bijan Robinson had to go in round one. And just how high does he end up going? Like, it's going to be informed, of course, by the teams that are making that decision. But Dallas is one of those where you absolutely have to address that. And this is a really easy way to do that. And the one point I want to make about Ashton Jeanty's game for the box score stats or people that don't watch college football quite as much and you're just looking at it, you're going to look at his receiving totals this year and you're going to be like, oh, I know he's a stud runner, but he must not be a great receiver. The kid's an amazing receiver. The year before, that's when they were throwing Jeanty the ball a whole bunch. And my supposition is that Boise State changes usage, took those receptions away from him and funneled them into carries because they wanted him at the Heisman ceremony, and they got him there. In fact, he almost won the thing. He ended up number 2 all-time single season in rushing yardage behind only Barry Sanders from Oklahoma State. But this kid can catch. Not a great pass blocker. It's the only thing that I will nitpick about Jeanty. But here's the good news. You're never going to want to keep him back there to pass block anyway. The guy's too good of a receiver.
Exactly.
You send him out there.
I like
he'll
it.
catch passes.
I love it. I love that. I love that call out. Well, Thor, you know that we love fantasy football. I've been bringing up some stats here and there during this show, and skill position players. That's what we love here. So I want you have 40 seconds to kind of talk through some of these skill position player guys. Sell us on why they're going to be good, why you have them going where they are. Let's start with number 14 at the Colts with Tyler Warren.
Tyler Warren's a stud, and they use them in all these different ways. They manufactured touches to him like Georgia previously had done with Brock Bowers, only Tyler Warren's 3 inches taller and 35 pounds heavier. And if Brock Bowers had tested, I think Tyler Warren would have tested better than him athletically as well. The guy's an absolute stud, and they need a manufactured touch guy. Tyler Warren is a 265-pound locomotive manufactured touch guy. You got problems when he has the ball in his hands.
All right. First of all, I love that because we're tight ends few and far between for fantasy football that are really good. So to have a rookie come in, we've seen 2 rookies in a row now, last 2 years, make some waves here for fantasy football. So I love the call out. Let's go over to another positional guy that we love, number 16 for the Arizona Cardinals. You have them taking Luther Burden III, wide receiver out of Missouri. What do you like about him?
Luther Burden was in the top 10 and even top 5s of every mock draft that was done in the summer, the 2 early ones. There was weird usage going on with Missouri this year. They didn't get the ball as much to Burden as they should have. There was, again, weird offensive things. They had a quarterback injury for a while in the fall. But Burden is the guy that you put in the slot and you just manufacture his touches within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage and watch that little water bug go. He just evades people, right? And he's just a little bolt of electricity. You put him next to Marvin Harrison, and then on the other side, you got the possession guy in Wilson, and then you have your efficiency monster in Trey McBride. If you think about pass-catching cores as a basketball team, what is that basketball team missing? It's the manufactured touch, lightning fast guy who can take advantage of all the open space in the middle that is afforded to you by having Harrison and Wilson on the other side. So I think this is a really good fit.
Marvin Harrison Jr., Luther Burden, and Trey McBride. I mean, that's going to be an offense that I want every single piece of if that comes true. I love that. All right, let's go over to the Denver Broncos and you selling us with the 20th overall pick in this draft. You have them taking Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. What do you like about him?
This is the Greg Dulcich you were promised, Bronco fans. This guy is actually that guy. All the fever dreams of what could Greg Dulcich become. Colston Loveland walks into the NFL as that guy. Bo Nix needs help, right? It was like throw to Cortland Sutton or pray for rain this year. You need a second guy. You probably even need a third guy there. Colston Loveland at this point, he's simply the most skilled pass catcher that is on the board. He's more skilled as a pass catcher and a route runner, I think, than Warren. It's just Warren is a freak. You manufacture him all the touches, etc. You can use him as a runner, etc. But it's just as far as the pass catching mechanics, that's Colston Loveland. So he would be a really good fit. And he's going to run all those routes like a watchmaker for Sean Payton. He's not deviating at all.
Let's go over to the last one here, and that is with the 21st overall pick. You have the Steelers taking Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver out of Ohio State. You got to finish this off here, Thor. What do you love about him?
Speaking of praying for rain outside of your wide receiver one, the Steelers, it is a barren wasteland outside of George Pickens. Egbuka fits pretty good, I think, with his game. And you think about Freiermuth and those different guys there. Egbuka is, he's off the conveyor belt from Jackson Smith and Jigba. It's another slot receiver from Ohio State and a guy who is fabulous at denoting whether there's zone coverage immediately. And then, sort of the supercomputer in his brain, where is that open spot in it? And he just gets there immediately, parks for the quarterback. He's a good route runner. He has very good hands, and he's slippery after the catch. So it's a guy who's going to add efficiency to your offense, and the Steelers desperately need a dude like this.
I love it, Thor. We could keep going for the next 18 hours talking through this mock draft, and I would love it. But everyone can go to fantasylife.com. The vibes were immaculate here, but go and read this article at fantasylife.com. 100% free for the mock draft. That is it for Thor Thursdays. We will be back, though. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us, and we'll see you here next time.